I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and opened up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me?
Professor?
Yes.
Hey, I can hear you live now in Studio B at revolution.radio. This is Gabriel from Arkansas. I can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now. All right, I'll go ahead then and do the show.
Professor? Yeah. Okay, when they do call in, I'll call back.
Perfect.
Bye.
Gabriel, you can still hear me? Listen, this is Jim Fetzer with The Raw Deal. I was invited to come on as Stu Peters to talk about JFK today, and it ran over time, so I'm running late. Apologies for that. I think when you see it, you'll understand why it was important for me to cover the bases here. Even Stu admitted there was a lot he was learning that he hadn't known before. So we'll see how this all plays out.
Recording in progress.
I have invited the others for the fearsome threesome today, and hope they will be able to join. Meanwhile, we have Iran prepping for negotiation with U.S. Russia and China have Iran's back. There's no doubt about that. The Netanyahu says an Iran deal would only work if the nuclear facilities were blown up. You can well imagine that's not going to happen. Completely ridiculous idea. We have a Russian lower house parliament ratifying a pact with Iran for a 20-year defense deal. 20 years. How wonderful is that? I'm very, very pleased. And we also have on Lou Rockwell, we have Caitlin Johnson reporting that if they tell you the Houthis attack ships, but they never tell you why. Absolutely correct. And of course, they never tell you why, because it's all on the up and up. Because they have declared war on Israel, and they're entitled to interdict the ships that are headed to Israel, but they don't want the world to know that this is all honest on the part of the Houthis, whom I admire beyond words. I mean, it's just wonderful. The Houthis are doing their thing. Bear in mind, here we have part of the report. Colonel Wilkerson, by the way, on the Truth Seeker, says if the U.S., you think the U.S. can beat Iran, Yemen just crushed that illusion. Listen up.
Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025, and our friend Carl Wilkerson is back with us. Welcome back.
Good to be with you, Neiman.
We had a meeting between Donald Trump and Netanyahu in which they were talking about Gaza. And here is what Donald Trump said, Larry.
I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't have given it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good.
Is the immigration, Mr. President, is the immigration plan still on the agenda?
Which immigration?
From Gaza. From Gaza.
All it is a concept that I had that I think is good, and now people are copying it. You know, maybe you want to tell people are talking about the Trump plan. Gee, why don't we do that? Would you like to answer that question?
I think what the president talked about is, first of all, to give people a choice. You know, Gazans were closed in. And every other place, including in arenas of battle, I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or any other place, people could leave. Gaza was the only place where they locked them in. We didn't lock them. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice? Now, we've been talking, including over lunch, about some countries, I won't go into them right now, that are saying, you know, if Gazans want to leave, we want to take them in. And I think this is the right thing to do. If you give, you know, it's going to take years to rebuild Gaza. In the meantime, people can have an option. The president has a vision. Countries are responding to that vision. We're working on it. I hope we'll have good news for you.
Yeah. Larry, your take.
Well, I'd already watched that, and I found it very painful to watch. I don't know who was the most sickening. I know who was the most ignorant, Donald Trump. Netanyahu knows the real facts, so his appearance was just lying. Let's just face it for a second. This is a man who ran very, very accurately described by Gideon Levy and others from Haaretz and other places of critical thought, a concentration camp, an open-air concentration camp. But we know exactly why Israel turned Gaza over to the Palestinians. They were getting beat the hell out of in the place, and they felt, and rightfully so, I think, the IDF leadership in particular, that they didn't need to be in there, that they could constrain the Gazans, as it were, much easier from the outside than the inside. They didn't count on the elections. I think Bibi Netanyahu did count on the elections that put Hamas in power, because Bibi Netanyahu has been allied with Hamas ever since those elections. He's been passing money to them from Qatar and other places. He's allied with them because they are adamantly against a two-state solution, whereas, for example, the Palestinian Authority, ill-led by Mahmoud Abbas and other Palestinians, but nonetheless were for a two-state solution. So he used Hamas to fight the Palestinian Authority. And he kept them in a concentration camp. And listen to what he said. Other people have a choice of leaving. They have a choice of leaving or die. They have a choice of leaving or have their mosque and their hospitals and their villages bombed to smithereens. They have a choice of leaving, and he compares it with Ukraine. What a joke. I mean, I had difficulty watching these two people. First of all, Trump is so ignorant of history, can't put two English sentences together to make a coherent thought. And Netanyahu's over there just nodding his head and looking like his fat, genocidal self. And this is in my Oval Office. This is in the Oval Office of the President of the United States. This is utterly disgusting. And yet, the American people seem, all 340 some odd million of them, going down every day as Trump runs his RDI flights. This is another thing, Nima. This is what this is. Misha Glenny pointed out years ago in his book, McMafia, that the number one criminal activity in the world, generating somewhere between $2 and $3 trillion every year in the black economy, was trafficking in people, mostly young boys and girls and women for prostitution and such. Trafficking in people even beat out illicit drugs and arms. That's what Donald Trump has established. a state-sponsored trafficking in people program. He is making money. The United States is going to make money off deporting all these people. They aren't going to Guantanamo, as he promised. I checked yesterday, there are about 30 people at Guantanamo. The military is not even committed to it. They're using civilian airliners. In fact, there was an expose piece yesterday also about the flight attendants on one of these civilian airliners who are really not very happy taking 200 men shackled from head to foot in their airplanes and treating them, as flight attendants are supposed to treat them, and being scared livid the whole time they're on the flight, and being accompanied by a few Customs and Border Patrol armed guards and so forth, who really don't do squat for them. They're really angry about how they were promised to do one sort of air flights, and now they're doing these what I call really the equivalent of rendition, detention, interrogation flights. Only the product here is not terrorism or torture at the other end. And
Bill, I sent
intelligence,
another
supposedly.
now. The two
The
others are
product
here.
here is money, because we're paying people like El Salvador to do this, and they're paying us back in terms of what we want from them. So this is a new business. It is going to, if Trump has his way, rival the slave trade. It is going to be another equivalent to the slave trade many years ago that was so profitable. This is going to be majorly profitable. Trump shipping people, trafficking in people at a state level. Incredible. And that's the two people we just watched, at least one of them. And Bibi would be all for this. Bibi would be all for Trump flying these civilian airliners into Gaza, picking up the Gazans and taking them somewhere. He'd be all for it. And he'd be making money off of it. You bet this is Trump's way of dealing with profit making for the empire. You're muted, or I can't hear you.
No,
Yeah.
glad to have you
Netanyahu
here,
was talking
gentlemen.
about
Yeah,
sending
this is
Gazans to Syria or Ukraine. I would wonder if I wouldn't be surprised if they have already started to talk with Al-Jolani or Zelensky about this.
I wouldn't either. Ukraine's critical need is for manpower. If, the Europeans and others are going to support it in continuing the war. And Syria would be a place also, I would think, that might accept some of them. But look at what they're doing. They're just shifting them from one hell to another hell, because Israel is fast wreaking its havoc in Syria as well. More bombs drop every day. Netanyahu is unstoppable in that sense. As long as the empire is behind him, he is very much so unstoppable. And let me go over some things here that are really troubling in the sense that Israel is collapsing. I picked this up the other day and I couldn't believe it, so I checked on it. The Rehabilitation Division of the Israeli Defense Ministry, the Rehabilitation Division of the Israeli Defense Ministry, leaked a report that 16,500 plus IDF have been wounded. Remember when I told you about the WIA count and the KIA count, and how the WIA count indicates more than the KIA? But I go to the KIA.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Management would like to take a moment to thank the listeners and hosts for all their support that has made Revolution Radio one of the biggest platforms for free speech in an ever-growing dark world of censorship. Unfortunately, this platform for free speech has never been free. We need the support of the people. It is the people like you, yes, you, that keeps the station in the front lines of the battle against tyranny and oppression. Please help support Revolution Radio so free speech will not be silenced in a world that seems to be going deaf to the real truth. With your support, we will be able to become an even bigger pillar of light in a dark world.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
We seem to have lost our host.
I went to get a glass of water. Sorry, you guys. I got a little throat.
Come on, Jim.
Little parched throat.
We're on the air.
Little parched throat. Okay. Everyone, welcome to the Raw Deal right here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, this 9th day of April, where I have a fearsome threesome plus one edition, a new version, you might say, of the fearsome foursome, because we not only have Russ Winter here, Joaquin Agopian, but also Bill Bonatotti.
Bill Bonatotti is obviously fearless. Come on, fearless. Go for it.
Who's done a great deal of good work assisting me, for example, with a couple of my motions in my Sandy Hook case, which are rather sterling. The motion to open pursuant to extrinsic fraud and fraud upon the court, and my motion to recuse Judge Frank Remington under the appropriate provisions of the Wisconsin codes. Bill, those are so well done. And of course, it puts a lie to this ridiculous claim made by this attorney from Ohio, Arwin W.Y.N. Young, that I threw my case when I actually took it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'm still fighting. I have 4 different appeals before the Court of Appeals. So where does somebody come up with this kind of rubbish? Bill, you have any thoughts about that?
Well, as I called you last night, Jim, and good to see you all again, by the way. Hi, Hakeem and Russ. I went over the original docket. I was like, all it would have taken, Wynn says that you're grossly negligent and so preposterous because he's acknowledging in his public statements he hasn't even looked at your case in Wisconsin. Yet his presumptions are absolutely preposterous, which we can outline if you want. But anyone can go into Wisconsin courts, look up Professor Posner versus Fetzer, and you can find it. I think it was 2019, Jim. Is that correct?
18. It was filed in 18 and has
18.
extended all these years.
Yeah. And you can look at all Jim's responses, legal responses going on now since then. And so I was very impressed with all the affidavits and the motions. And of course, we worked together in that motion open judgment where Judge Remington actually violated the procedural aspects of the motion to actually further incriminate himself with prejudice and abuse of judicial discretion. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him to recuse himself. This is the thing. Okay, do you want me to backtrack and just talk about Wynn's assertions, or you want
go right ahead as kind of a framework for Russ and Joaquin to comment. Go right ahead, Bill.
Well, actually, Bill and I talked about this a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad. Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
So Wynn, let me say this. Wynn is right on point, I think, when it comes to the Alex Jones case. But he makes a false equivalency to your case, which is completely separate.
And okay. Wolfgang Halbig.
Wolfgang actually won. Wolfgang won his case.
That's sort of convenient cherry picking there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with Colette Payne in Florida, where they fought that in state court, which is relevant to counter Wynn's narrative. So let's go back to Wynn's narrative so we can frame this for people listening who probably may not be familiar. And unfortunately, Todd Collender, who authorized Wynn in a sense, he platformed him, another attorney, Todd Collender, and validated him. And I think Todd, to be honest, really hadn't looked at this, and he was in deference to Wynn, but he's still responsible because that's his negligence. Do you see what I mean? So we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so Wynn is looking at the Alex Jones case, and he's making a false equivalence here. So Alex, see, when you receive a damage defamation case that's based on freedom of speech, right? It's your First Amendment, what's called subject matter question jurisdiction to remand it to federal court. It's a lot of legalese. In other words, you're sued in state court, you're the defendant, you have 30 days upon receiving the summons, you and your attorneys, to motion it, in a sense, to federal. And why is that important? One, you have the question matter, which is First Amendment. The second is what's called diversity jurisdiction. Okay, now, diversity jurisdiction, let's say, failed in the Alex Jones case because it would have to be what's called complete diversity, meaning all the defendants would have to be out of Connecticut, not in Connecticut, meaning out of state. Well, one of them's from Meriden. It happens to be Wolf's assistant, which I would say is a stretch to even name him because Wolf's assistant made no public statements. All he did was drive Wolf around, did research, whatever. So that's sus. But, okay, so what Alex Jones' attorneys did was they only cited diversity jurisdiction. They didn't cite the subject question of First Amendment, you see, which was a lock if they did. However, the cases have what's called dual jurisdiction. They're filed in state. You can find them in state. The fact that it didn't go to state does not mean in and of itself you threw it. You see, why is that important? Because Wynn is saying Jim Fetzer didn't remand this case to federal court. You see, Wolfgang Halbig deferred to Norm Pattis, and basically he had joined the case. Well, guess what? I talked to Wolf about that. Should I dive into that for a second, Jim?
Let me just interject. When I was served the complaint, I had no attorney. I did a little research about courts, and I had so much evidence from the book. The FBI Consolidated Crime Report showing no murders in Newtown 2012. I had the FEMA manual. Today I have overwhelmingly more, but I had all the stuff about the conformity to a drill. You had the sign, everyone must check in. You had bottled water pizza at the firehouse. You had, there was no surge of EMTs into the building, no string of ambulances. There was no evacuation. There was no sign. the school wasn't even compliant with the Americans for Disability Act, which required blue and white signage and parking spaces. There were none. That means it could not have been even legally operating. I had this massive evidence, and the judge at the scheduling conference said, while he appreciated my views about this not having happened, that it was not relevant to the truth or the accuracy of the death certificate over which I was being sued, in spite of the fact that it said that the decedent had died at Sandy Hook Elementary on the same date of multiple gunshot wounds. So how can it not be relevant? But that was just staggering. And at the time, there were two other attorneys for Wrongs Without Remedies, which owns Moonrock Books. So the publisher, a company has to have legal representation. And then there was Mike Pellicek, my co-author, co-editor, and me, who had no legal representation. But we tried desperately to get someone to represent us. We wrote 60, 70 inquiries, and no one was willing to touch this hot potato. But it was a judge eviscerating my case. He wouldn't let me introduce any facts, so there'd be no disputed facts, so he could conduct the equivalent of a non-jury trial and find me.
You're a doctor. You're a PhD. You should have been like magic and seen this coming, man.
Well, it's so peculiar. Wynn can have his opinion about how someone conducts a case, but just because he has that opinion, I mean, Wolfgang didn't follow his advice, and Wolfgang won. And I believe I'm going to have my case reversed in spite of not following his advice. So where does he come off with his arrogance? Especially, as you say, Bill, he never even looked at any of my briefs, didn't read the book, hasn't looked at the videos where I document all this good stuff.
Some kind of fallacy of authority where he projected on you that you're some kind of a big egghead brainiac that should have been able to foresee kind of a loaded court against you, almost like I call it a star chamber court, and somehow magically, just because you're a doctorate, have a doctorate that you should have known that this was going to happen. You should have been a mind reader.
Well, let me give you an illustration of the absurdity of his position. He makes a big deal about my not having book insurance. Well, I've never heard of a writer having book insurance. That's a publisher. The publisher is the one putting the book out in the public domain. But the point is, if I had insurance, would that make me immune from a phony, contrived lawsuit where we had a judge who was basically not allowing me to produce any evidence? No. All the insurance would have done would be pay off a judgment. It has nothing to do with the merits of my suit. I thought it was ridiculous he should raise that. Go right ahead.
Can I jump back in? Go ahead.
Listen, I'm on the air. I'll call you when I'm off. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so you're picking up right there. That's a good, very good points, guys. So that's one of also Wynn's. Oh, he says the plaintiffs would never bring this case and sue anybody unless they knew the defendants would throw it. Huh? No, really, that's his major arguments.
That's amazing.
Where does he come up with that?
So now he's also making the assertion, okay, so we got Wrongs Without Remedies, which is Moonrock Books, that basically caved, right? So Jim's publisher caved. That's not Jim's fault. You know what I mean? Now Jim's like unprotected because he obviously was a defendant with them and so adjoined to the case. Do you see what I'm saying? So now Jim is looking for lawyers. Now you can criticize Jim. You know, Jim, you should have had author's insurance. You should have had writer's insurance. That's a separate issue. Do you see what I mean? Jim didn't. He was relying on his publisher to make sure he was being covered. So, hey, that's a business decision that you can say, well, that's not
the lesson of all this is don't write books.
How absurd. I want to get Joaquin. I want to give Joaquin a chance to get a few words in edgewise. Joaquin.
Well, my view of the legal system is similar to my view of law in America. We live, well, you, Jim, and you, Bill, live in a lawless society in America. I'm totally convinced. The Constitution, our, quote, rule of law historically, is not honored or upheld in the legal system. I think George Soros has stacked all the courts with judges and attorneys where it's not fair. the righteous party doesn't get opportunity to present their side of the story anymore. You're shut down. It's cold, cut and dry. You're out of here. And that's how I think the court system is. We need to revamp everything, get rid of all these bastards that are totally treasonous to America and our Constitution. But, you know, that's the big radical thing that is required to correct the situation. As far as the details of your case, I know only the fringe amount that we're talking about here, but you got a raw deal because that judge was totally against you from the very beginning, protecting. And I think it goes deeper because that was an Obama thing. And Obama was basically saying, hey, we got to get gun control and we got to have this little drill go live, even though the school wasn't even open and all the rest of the things that you bring out. Yet, you know, unless you read your book, you never will know because the media, everybody's stacked against the truth in America now. That's the bottom line.
That's just astonishing. Go ahead, Bill. Pick up.
100%. You know, we go back to 1871, where the passage of the Act of 1871, Congress formed a corporation known as the United States. That's when our Constitution got hijacked. We became basically a corporation in due to the City of London, but that's a whole nother. I mean, that's irrelevant. But so we had the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which subverted the Smith-Mundt Act of 48, where media can propagandize us and they're paid for through the government. You see, so Obama, getting back to what Joaquin just said, Obama signed in the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. I can't remember, about 6 months before this whole Sandy Hook thing, right? So obviously, from that point forward, the media's on board, paid off by the government, to lie about all this. And this was obviously a FEMA Homeland Security drill, a capstone event. We found the manual, you know, all those things that Jim very appropriately has in his book. And the judge eliminated in pretrial conference, going back to what Joaquin said, the courts are nothing but I've been through an extortion racketeering act for the predatory establishment, the powers that shouldn't be. You see what I mean? That's it. You go into that court and we're all fed the fairy tale. You got the lady with the the blinders on, lady justice, and the scales. You know what tips those scales? Money and power, baby. Well,
go ahead. Just listening to all this procedural stuff that you ran through. I mean, point by point, procedure this, procedure that. I'm sitting there kind of going, okay, where's the truth? Where's the justice? Where is that in all this? Nowhere. I mean, this trial would have been a good opportunity for people to see the merits of what even happened. What was the truth of the situation? But they don't even get you close to that. And then a guy like Young comes along and pulls more procedural shit out of his ass for all of us laymen to listen to and pontificate of, oh, we're so smart as attorneys. We procedurally, I would have proceeded in this way, and this, and he didn't have an attorney, and just all. And I'm just sitting there going, sorry, I have a fairly IQ, but that's just not very convincing.
He tries to turn a gross fault into a virtue by claiming, since he knew a priori without looking at my stuff that I'd thrown my case, he won't look at my stuff. And I say, how could you have drawn the conclusion without looking at my stuff in the first place?
He's an expert on procedure. He knows procedure. That's the whole point of this conversation. It shouldn't just be about procedure.
Most of the country still thinks Sandy Hook was real, for crying out loud. So when he says it's obvious, that no one would have brought such a suit unless they knew it was going to be thrown is just frankly absurd.
Can I comment on that?
I want you.
Regarding what Russ and what you're all saying. I mean, we go back to the Nuremberg trials, Article 19, which is British common law, which is what our law is based on. Article 19, no evidence required. 21, no proof of fact required. Judge Holland Fistone, former U.S. Chief Justice, called Nuremberg a fraud and a high-grade lynching party. So, in other words, this has been going on. And the courts are just that. They're kabuki theater, right? There's what they are. With a lot, like you guys are saying, a lot of legal babble on, do you see what I mean? Legal language to keep people confused, and they even suspect that Jim, who's a professor in philosophy, is going to know all the ins and outs. But the point is, Wolf fought in state court when Leonard Posner brought the suit. Now, we had a great attorney, Celeste Payne, and it got, upon discovery, right? It was never remanded to federal, to my knowledge. And upon discovery, what happened? The plaintiffs dropped the suit against Wolf. That's a win. When you're being sued and they drop it, that's a win. So that was fought in state court. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And nobody should expect Wolfgang Halbig, with all he went through, to continue on. He just walked away and went back to his wife, got on with his life. He'd already sacrificed a good chunk of his wealth and his life in this battle. So once he kind of was released from that case, what do you expect, Win? He's supposed to get right back into the fight? Really?
Well, yes, I want to corroborate that. Yes, exactly. So I talked to Wolf 3 times, and it's relevant because, I had studied this matter and said, see what happened to him in Florida in civil court, also criminal. They actually pulled Wolf out of his house at like 1:15 a.m. The cops walked this poor man for a mile, cuffed. He was on sleeping meds. He could have had a heart attack or stroke. He needed a knee replacement. He's an elderly gentleman. Talk about abusive. Do this to a Florida State trooper, school principal, customs agent, FEMA certified school safety expert, also certified by the Attorney General of Florida. I mean, it's important. Why are we diving into Wolf so much now? People who don't know. Because if you go to the Win Young site, R. Win Young, I forget the exact name of it, you can find it easily. You will see he is totally mocking what he calls the gurus, Jim and Wolf. Okay? So he's grouping you guys together, Jim. Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, shame on you, Win Young. And shame on you, Victor Hugo, for exploiting this and doing some with your vendetta. Shame on you.
Right. So what I want to touch on real quick, because it ties right into the false equivalency regarding the Sandy Hook case and Jim's matter that Win is making. See, there's a lot going on here, obviously, but you've got 3 different gentlemen, actually more than that when you include other parties. But the point is, okay, so let's real quick. I'll touch on when I talked to Wolf, he says to me, did you know I was named in the Alex Jones Connecticut case as a defendant? I'm like, no, you already beat it back in Florida. How did they, what? They got nothing. The FBI crime table says 0. All anyone had, here's the other thing. The idea you got to go to federal, have justice pursuant federal case law, which is, okay, all right, just talk real quick. You got common law and you got case law. So the federal case laws that set legal precedent, you can cite them in state. The point is, Brandenburg versus Ohio, New York Times versus Sullivan, Snyder versus Phelps. So there's 3 landmark cases that set legal precedent. There's more, okay? And so obviously, but that's not Win's argument. Win is saying, well, Alex threw the case. You never fight it in state court where the jurists would be prejudicial because they're all from Connecticut, right? And they believe the shooting happened. So you want to fight it in district court, okay? Yeah, but guess what? Jim Fetzer's case was adjudicated where? In Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. But you don't know anything about Jim Fetzer.
What this guy? It's like, what the fuck? What the? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to swear, I guess. So anyway, but really, you're just like, okay, Win. Yeah, win. Okay, so I don't know what this guy's history is. I'm not going to get into that. The point is, let's just look at what he's trying to say. So Jim's in Wisconsin. He doesn't have Connecticut jurists. There's no bias, you know what I mean, whatsoever, based on a jury pool. Go ahead. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, and Jim's in Wisconsin, and a bunch of outsiders are coming into Wisconsin, and he's arguing that Jim's fellow statesmen and neighbors and people that he knows, he knows what the juries might be like. Right. He's not supposed to have that as a jurisdiction. I mean, I would be running to my home state if I was in some kind of a case like this. Federal? Are you kidding me? Why?
Bear in mind there was no.
You're an idiot, Win. You're just pulling it out your ass, doing some kind of a fallacy of authority.
Bear in mind there was.
It was like a movie in Chicago.
Bear in mind there was no jury. I was denied the right to a jury trial. That's the part. That's why I took it to the Supreme Court, was because I've been on it when there were massive disputed facts. The judge even excluded the testimony 2 forensic document experts who said all 4 of the versions of the death certificate and evidence at the point were fake. All 4 of them were fake.
But you should have known that. You should have known that they wouldn't give you a jury. You're a doctorate. You're a PhD.
I did have a jury for the damages. Would you believe all the jurors? 1 man and 11 women, 30 years and younger, claimed they'd never even heard of Alex Jones. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the 7th Amendment real quick, because that's relevant to your, when there's more than a $20 dispute and you have adverse evidence, right? That's based on common law, like $20. Yeah, that's based on Old English common law. You're entitled to a jury trial based on the merits of the case.
Yeah.
When the judge eliminates your evidence in pretrial conference, that's highly prejudicial. It's
you think?
Common knowledge.
Highly prejudicial? Oh, God. Joaquin, isn't this an absurdity from a legal point of view? Your thoughts?
Good job, Bill.
It's horrible, actually, that they treated you this way. Would not allow you your day in court. It's pretty incredible, but to me, it doesn't really surprise me in today's world. Back when I went to court against West Point because they ran up a bunch of false demerits on me, and I took them to court for failure to allow due process of law. Back in 1972, it was a whole different world.
Yes.
The United States actually had a rule of law called the Constitution, and due process was part of that, of course. So I won the case and was able to finish my senior year and graduate. But, you know, it's a different world now. And you know, when you did your case now a few years back, it's totally different. And anybody that has a cause and the truth, they're not listened to. These judges are corrupt. They're evil. Part of the system.
Yeah, it's just stunning, absolutely stunning. Russ, I know you got lots more you want to say. Go ahead.
Well, I've been interjecting all.
Yeah. We've noticed. Bill, you got.
I might get another opportunity to interrupt.
Yeah. Bill, talk about the levels of complicity here. You know, from the creator to the distributor to the disseminator. Talk about that, because I think BitChute and Rumble are in for it here.
Well, that's when you're talking damage and defamation liability.
Okay, wait a minute. Let the audience know this is not a private conversation, is it?
No.
We have an audience.
No, we're live.
Let the audience know.
We're live.
What we're talking about.
We're live. They know what we're talking about.
Yeah, not really.
Well, no, they don't. Victor Hugo Vaca has been doing one video after the next for the next, what? How many months now? 4 or 5 months, whatever. I mean, it's a long time now. And it's just totally libelous, defamation of character on you, Jim. Started with you, went on to me a little bit, and then it went on to Russ. And it's out of control. So you're trying to finally put an end to it legally.
Yes.
And we've run into some difficulty with some of the basically venues. BitChute is the bitch.
Right, because these videos have been disseminated on BitChute and Rumble. They're liable too, and they're in number. There are over 250 of these slanderous videos. We'll be right back after this break. Right back.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Was it a conspiracy? Did you know that the police in Boston were broadcasting "This is a drill, this is a drill" on bullhorns during the marathon? that the Boston Globe was tweeting that a demonstration bomb would be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities, and that one would be set off in 1 minute in front of the library, which happened as the Globe had announced. Peering through the smoke, you could see bodies with missing arms and legs, but there was no blood. The blood only showed up later and came out of a tube. They used amputee actors and a studio-quality smoke machine. Don't let yourself be played. Check out And Nobody Died in Boston Either. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio.
It is no secret that the so-called mainstream media is best described as controlled propaganda. Countless news stories are either totally ignored or spun with half-truths, and because of this, essential facts and vital information are often compromised. Join Dr. Ott every Friday night on Studio B at 10 p.m. Eastern and learn why The Story Behind the Story was nominated for a Peabody Award in its second year of producing unparalleled broadcasting excellence in 1997. That is, if you really care about learning the truth.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
I think we were talking about the standards of BitChute. Bill is going to apparently define defamation. Is that right?
I was asking Bill to break down the levels of, from the content creator to others who were involved down to the disseminator, about responsibility in a defamation case, Bill, if you would.
Sure. Jim, let me just take one moment to help clarify one more thing regarding Wolf, because it's relevant to Wynn's false equivalency to you. You see what I mean? And then I can jump right into that. So the last thing that Wynn asserts regarding Wolf is because Wolf, he claimed he was pro se, but what Wolf said was he talked to Norm. He basically joined the case by Norm Pattis representing him. And he told Norm, listen, he said, depose me, Wolf said. Depose me and subpoena the documents we didn't get in the FOIA hearings and the witnesses who didn't show up, which why there were several. Anyone watching those FOIA hearings would say the whole case is thrown. Now, that's important. Well, let me stop. Regarding Victor and Wynn, I was communicating with Victor. I sent him a bunch of emails, including our motion to open judgment.
Wynn, you are communicating with Wynn, Bill.
Which really tears apart this whole matter.
Bill, you were communicating with Wynn, right? You said you were communicating with Victor. You were communicating with Wynn.
Right. What Victor asked me to do was to email Wynn.
Right.
He said,
Okay,
please
there you
email
go.
all this to Wynn. So I sent over 30 emails to him, and I was calling him saying, Wynn, you know, see, my thought was you need an attorney. In my opinion, it'd be helpful for you to have an attorney, a trial attorney. Maybe we get Todd Collender on board, because you got civil liability cases that are even way bigger than this regarding Elon, Jimmy Dore, Alex Jones. Still, in my opinion, and not to mention potential what I think might fit into the False Claim Act, a qui tam whistleblower case pursuant to the False Claim Act, where the government is sued for this. You see, and plaintiffs get 30% of that, the total case. And now I want to say, I mean, there's so much to talk about here, but to show how corrupt the courts are, you have, for example, an equivalency we can make to Dr. Judy Wood, where she brought a qui tam case, which you can find against the NIST engineers. I think it was called.
Well, she filed it. She filed it. Did she prevail? I don't think. I thought it was.
What happened was Jim, they did the same thing to her they did to you.
Yeah.
That they did to everybody. When you fight the federal government, what do? They say, guess what? Pre-trial conference, that evidence is non-evidence. And they eliminated her evidence and her ability to subpoena anybody. And they go, oh, no. In other words, you can't question the government narrative. I believe it was Allied Research et al., if I'm not mistaken, that were the engineers for the NIST report, National Institute of Standard Technology. Well, anyone looking at 9/11 by now is even Jimmy Dore and Kim Iverson are questioning that with the University of Alaska professor. I mean, come on. So what they did was they basically did to her what's called, everybody doesn't know, this is called a form of summary judgment, right? Basically, the judge sits there. He's got no expertise on engineering. Here's Dr. Judy, he's an engineer. You got Allison Sonny Maynard with an affidavit, Attorney Allison, with an affidavit in your pleadings, in your docket, Jim, right? Plus, I'm not going to touch on anything more than that, just on the affidavit with hers there. You can expand on that if you want. The point I'm trying to make is you had competent legal counsel, right? And I want to say my own experience litigating in courts, and I have done a lot of that here in Connecticut. I didn't just was born with this verbiage, legal spaghetti salad. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? How did I learn this? By litigating. And I know what I know, and there's more to learn. I'm not a lawyer, but I've learned a lot. And I can't get an attorney to represent me. I've talked to 40 law firms, fighting the largest hotel chain in the world, fighting the Catholic Church, fighting our own state courts, but whatever. Once you take on the monster, autocracy, basically you're,
But the point is, you told me this in our conversation, is you gave Wynn, even before he had this interview with Victor Hugo, he received a lot of information from you about this case, and didn't even look at it, did he?
Well, I kept calling him. I'm like, well, I found his phone number and Todd's, and I was calling Wolf's, and Wynn and Todd. I was like, hey guys, can we talk about this? Maybe you can help Jim out. Hello, if you want to help expose Sandy Hook, we all agree it was a false flag. We all agree it was FEMA drill.
For some strange reason, they turned it on its head and came up with this cockamamie through the case bullshit. And it's just amazing. And that I don't understand. That's a big mystery, what that's all about.
Well, let's just say I would argue that they're right about the fact Alex Jones, he could have stayed in state court. Whatever you want to say about the remand to federal, okay, I'm not going to argue with that. All Alex Jones had to do was go into court and not say a word. That's it. Because you have to prove, plaintiff has to prove the case happened, what they're alleging happened, that they're actual deaths. And then you have to prove malice. You have to prove, because it's a public matter, right? You have to prove that defendant's primary purpose and whole thing of what they're doing is malice. Well, however you feel about Alex, right? And I'm not going to get into that. Bottom line is there's no way to say that in something where he's got Wolfgang Halbig, the FEMA certified, Attorney General certified Florida State Trooper, former principal. And if anyone, here's the thing, anyone looking at those FOIA hearings can see the whole case is thrown. There's 4 FOIA hearings. You have a hard time.
Yeah, people should go. I watched them, actually. I actually took the time. I mean, I'm so much into this kind of shit that I took the time to watch all those FOIA hearings, and that was one of the most biggest travesties I've ever seen.
Oh, I even talked to Kay Wilson, Wolf's attorney, at one point. I can get into that. You guys decide where you want this to go. I'm happy to talk more about the FOIA and Kay and everything that's obvious there. Pull your hair out. I don't have any hair left here, but you know what I got back here, right, Russ? So the point I'm trying to say is I want to touch on. So let me finish. Attorney Wins. I want to counter his point that Wolf, because he signed on to the motion to remand based on diversity, right? Which failed because they added Wolf's driver from Meriden, so you didn't have complete diversity. Not everybody was out of the state of Connecticut, you see. However, Wolf's not an attorney. He joined and he signed, and in other words, he deferred to Alice's attorney. And what happened? Wolf was dropped. Wolf, and that's when you're sued and plaintiff drops you. That's all you can ask for. You see what I mean? You win in that regard. You walk. There's no liability against you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So complete fabrication to say that he threw his case. Complete fabrication. He walked away undamaged. He walked away.
Yeah.
Legally, he'd been damaged in other ways, just through the ordeal that he had to go through. But at that stage, he was legally untouched and undamaged. He could go home and live the rest of his life.
And along those lines, when I talked to Will, so I said, well, what happened with Norm? And he goes, never heard from him again, meaning the plaintiffs must agree to drop Wolf.
Yeah, because they didn't want Wolf deposed. They didn't want him deposed because he had more information than anybody.
You're absolutely right, Russ. And keep in mind, let's face it, they're all government operatives because this is the FEMA drill. All the alleged parents, and I have no trouble saying that. I've been saying that on social media everywhere ever since I caught on to this, from Call-In with David Sachs when I was a host there to X, and we all know about how that went there. And I got 46,000 views on Jim's and X and Jim's fake news, Truth vs. Alex Jones HBO special that Jim and I went on, which people can find, and Jim can cite that. And it proves everything over and over again. And you also have in the public domain, Russ, you and I mentioned this, and also Wolf acquired videos that Chief Cahill confirmed happened on the day, the videos of the Newtown Police video dash cam footage. But you also have the Connecticut State Police video footage, which you can find in Rumble. And we need to talk about Sandy Hook, the third presenter.
Here's what the audience needs to understand, because I talked to Bill for a couple of hours, great conversation, because I learned a lot. But there was some emails going back and forth that I was privy to as a CC. I wasn't active in it, of Bill and Win Young.
Yeah.
Win, get your head out of your ass. What are you doing? Look at this. Look at this. And the only thing that Win Young did is threatened to turn the FBI loose on you. So they've turned that narrative around against Bill. And you can hear Victor say this. Well, Bill's the guy that threatened Win Young. Well, yeah, I'd be pissed off at Win Young too, if you knew the whole story.
Well, I never threatened Win. If you take, I know.
I saw it all. I was a witness.
Yeah.
He just blew smoke out of his ass a little bit and kind of threatened you. That's what.
Well, Win never had the courtesy to call me back. Why did I keep leaving him messages? Because he kept doing what he was doing. It's all over his site. Then he was on. With other parties. He went on with Todd Collender. He went on with Victor more than once. And you got all this whole group of Victor's people. And I'm like, no, guys, let's talk. So I kept calling Win. I left them messages. I sent them texts.
And the audience, keep in mind that you had a little bit of somewhat of a relationship with Win before this all broke. You were giving him files and stuff. That's what the audience needs to understand.
Yeah,
you were
30
collaborating with him. You were collaborating. You just didn't show up uninvited. And later,
Well, no, I was asked to email him by Victor.
Right.
Right.
And
And so
collaborated with him.
I thought we were going to work together on the behalf of exposing Sandy Hook and work on our First Amendment rights and our Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment. Go ahead.
So there's some kind of skullduggery going on here, man. There really is. This is really bullshit. And Victor's trying to turn it on like he's really got some big expose on this whole Sandy Hook thing. And Victor doesn't know anything. I bet you if you deposed Victor and started asking him basic questions about Sandy Hook, he wouldn't know anything. I have 10 times the knowledge of Sandy Hook than he does.
Yeah.
And Bill has 100 times the knowledge.
I believe.
So I'd like to see Victor Hugo and Bill go head to head. He doesn't know anything about it. He knows nothing about it. He's just carrying out a vendetta.
Let's get Joaquin back in here.
And the clickbait really gets good, doesn't it, Victor?
I think that clickbait.
You got a bunch of people that'll sit there and go, "Oh, Victor's blowing the whole case. Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer. I believe.
Joaquin can address this, but Victor appears to have narcissistic personality disorder. He just thrives on attention for himself, and he'll go out of his way any way he can to get it, no matter how extraordinary or bizarre. We got multiple stories out of Miami describing him as one of the strangest residents of the town for some of the happy horse shit he pulled. Joaquin, you have a background in counseling. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he has a narcissistic injury where he plays victim. He says, it's the Jews. Well, nobody plays victim better than the Jews and Victor. Victor's number one for playing victim.
Yeah.
That's what he does. And he always puts it on everybody else doing all these terrible things. You know, I mean, my view on Victor is, yeah, he got a couple of shows, you know, Stu and a few others that are up there, you know, with as far as influencers. But, you know, you can't go with a one-trick pony that people get sick of pretty quick.
Yeah, he's very overrated.
It's the Jews, you know? It's too one-dimensional, and we live in a complicated world where you can't get away with that, and you're going to claim your fame on that. That's a ridiculous thing. So this guy doesn't have what it takes to reach the big time, which is everything to him. He's very ambitious, obviously, and will cut anybody's throat to get there. You know, that's his modus operandi. So, you know, I think the guy's going to burn himself out. People are not going to pay attention to this guy. So I took the course where let him fucking blow whatever he wants to say about, you know, I understand you guys like saying, hey, enough is enough. I get it. But this guy has a following of about 3 people. He makes up people, I think, on, you know, his little chat.
Sock puppet. Yeah.
Sock puppet.
You know, yeah. It's a one-man show, you know. He's a nobody now. You know,
Let me inject here a story that I've been on lately, and you guys saw this. Is that he has a sock puppet. It's either a sock puppet or a flying monkey. I don't know which. It's probably 80% chance it's a sock puppet, maybe a 20% chance it's a flying monkey of some type. But this individual's named James Tracy constantly comes to the rescue of Victor on these different commentaries and backs him up. She's the backup. Well, I saw, you know, I'm looking at this gal's avatar, and I kind of sent it to Brian Davidson. I said, run this picture, see if you can find the photo of this lady. And it turned out that it was a professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore.
He'd stolen the image. She was not actually the participant. He'd stolen her image.
Right. Yeah, and then Jane comes on and tries to defend. Let me give you the sequence so you get an understanding how this guy works. I'm not going to mention the guy's names. I'll mention him later, but I don't want to give him any advertising. But there's a dialogue going on with Jane where she's, I'm confronting her because I can't do anything on Victor's channel. I'm blocked. I can't say a word. Everything goes unchallenged, so I can't block. But this other jackass that he works with, his other flying monkey, which I will get into in a second, I can talk because he likes to talk smack with me. He loves talking smack with Russ Winter, so I got him kind of addicted to that. So I can sit around and kind of observe, get my own intel. She shows up after I confronted her on this stolen identity, and claimed, oh, well, the reason I did that is that I'm an admirer of, I'm not going to mention the professor's name that she stole, and her name is similar to mine. Really? And that was such a ludicrous explanation. So you understand that? She used the avatar because she admired this professor and figured that she could use this innocent professor's avatar and a version of her name to go talk smack on Victor's channels. I mean, how low can you scoop? And they had to do a cleanup of that. They basically blocked me temporarily and then took everything down, took the photos. And fortunately, Victor and crew, we saved all that. I've got all that. We've got all that information screen saved, so it's not going anywhere. But the public can't see it. So nobody ever pieces this stuff together. I'm just seeing it firsthand. That's a typical Victor Hugo operation.
Can I clarify a couple things?
Please,
we'll move on real quick.
Please.
All right. Yeah. So regarding, I left Win quite a few messages trying to encourage him. Now, I may have said, you may end up in a lawsuit when you may get sued, but if I said that, I don't recall, that's a statement of intent. That's not a threat of bodily harm. You see the difference? To be charged with, so if they're complaining I'm threatening him, that's just a conflation. You see what I mean?
But he does that all the time, Bill. That's his style.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift back to Jane Tracy and Victor for a moment.
Okay,
so right now they're sensing that there could be some kind of lawsuit coming. I don't, to be honest with you, Victor's in Republic of Georgia. He's probably judgment proof. So I don't know what good a lawsuit would do to him.
Russ, we don't even know that. Honestly, I think he's in Miami.
Okay, well, I don't know. I've heard through the grapevine that it's Georgia.
Well, he claims that. He says that's where he is. But
anyway,
go ahead. Just go ahead.
The point is that they've gotten wind that there's sort of things stirring from our camp, and there is. There's no question about it.
Obviously,
they conflated that to be that we're coming after all the people who comment in his little trashy channel, and we're not going to do that. Just because you remain engaged in smack talk.
Yeah, who gives
narrative? That doesn't mean we're coming after you. So that kind of leads us to the next phase of all this, which is this flying monkey that he works with, who all of a sudden decides that he's going to put a series of videos up that claim I'm a pedophile.
And that you and I are gay. My wife got a boot out of that.
And then I gave my granddaughter herpes. And then whenever my name is mentioned on the channel, herpes is associated with it. So right now we're looking at the law, and we're looking at this as being defamation, cyberbullying, a whole series of crimes. So there's probably going to be a criminal complaint of some type against certain individuals. That doesn't mean we're coming after everybody. We're not going to go out. We're not going to go looking for every trash talker, smack talker on his channels. That's not going to happen. There may be some people singled out that are particularly egregious.
Here's where I want to get back to Bill. Bill, who would be the parties who might be sufficiently liable as to have a suit brought against them?
Well, let's keep in mind, you have criminal liability and you have civil liability. They're separate issues, right?
Yes.
So if one can prove cyberbullying, the issue is getting you're going to have to get someone in civil authority or law enforcement to write that up, get the complaint in. because it's an investigation, then the state's attorney and judge would have to sign the warrants. Okay, so that's the process, you guys, for getting the criminal complaint in loosely. You can start it where you live, but they usually then refer you to the district where, you know, the alleged criminal is, and they don't like to be in the middle too much. You know, that's what I found dealing with police. So you guys can follow that up. Then civil liability is a whole nother matter. Damage and defamation, you know, reputational, if you can prove loss of income or say you need a medical care, just for an example. I'm not saying that ties in here, but that the typical things that play into damage, defamation, you know, legal fees, things of that nature that are recoupable, right? Now, so you have the content creator who's making the material and putting it out there. You have the one who's repeating it, right? The repetition by another group of people or associates. And then you have the platform upon which it's disseminated. Okay. So those are the three potential people who could be liable. I should say party.
The third one in this case would be BitChute and Rumble, but BitChute mostly.
Yeah. So there you go. As far as, I'm sorry.
Is that the correct definition, you think?
Well, I mean, he's in Rumble and BitChute, Victor. And you also have Todd, who platformed Wynn and deferred to him in his own show. He has a Rumble channel too, Todd Callender. And that's important because when Todd's deferring to Wynn, authorizing him in a sense to speak on Todd's behalf. It's not a light thing. But you're talking damage and you're talking like a daisy chain of liability. And then you also have Victor, right? So those are the three primary parties. And I know there's other people involved that have done some really disgusting things and that you described, Russ, and my heart goes out to you for that. I mean, to bring your granddaughter in, that's no joke. That's just, and I think any judge, see, now, okay, let's talk about this. So you can seek restitutional compensation. You can seek, repayment, but that may not apply here. And the other thing is the judge can issue declarative judgments and injunctions. So when you're going after somebody in civil, there's three remedies. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not just about money. So that's where people go astray. They think, oh, there's no way to attach him because
don't give these guys too much legal advice, okay?
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I'll hold off there. I did want to mention real quick regarding. Okay, let me just touch on because this undermines Wynn's premise, which is important. Because okay, so real quick, all Alex Jones, anyone has to do, if it was an honest court of law, which it's not, is just say, gee, you know, that FBI crime table 8 still says no one died.
Right. To this day.
Right. So I believe the FBI crime table. You know what? I think that's true. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter because people say, oh, the FBI is corrupt. Well, hey, that's a separate issue. What's in the public domain to this day? 0 murders. Where's my liability? Why don't you sue the DOJ FBI? What the hell are you suing me for?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not liable for what they're saying. I'm just repeating it. Go ahead. Yeah. So there you go. And gosh, if you're talking chain of liability, the people, there's been no lawsuit brought against the Department of Justice, FBI on this matter. So Wolf's been dropped, right? In the middle there, the FEMA expert, certified by FEMA, yeah? How is Alex liable in this chain of liability? There's no way to claim he's malicious. That's bullshit. You know, the FBI, what I would have done if I was Robert Barnes when he talked in front of the Waterbury court and he did. There was a conference with Alex and Robert Barnes, attorney Robert Barnes.
Okay. We got a break. Bill. We'll be right back and we'll be on the line.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Management would like to take a moment to thank the listeners and hosts for all their support that has made Revolution Radio one of the biggest platforms for free speech in an ever-growing dark world of censorship. Unfortunately, this platform for free speech has never been free. We need the support of the people. It is the people like you, yes, you, that keeps the station in the front lines of the battle against tyranny and oppression. Please help support Revolution Radio so free speech will not be silenced in a world that seems to be going deaf to the real truth. With your support, we will be able to become an even bigger pillar of light in a dark world.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Even the government admits that 9/11 was a conspiracy. But did you know that it was an inside job? That Osama had nothing to do with it? That the Twin Towers were blown apart by a sophisticated arrangement of mini or micro nukes? That Building 7 collapsed 7 hours later because of explosives planted in the building? Barry Jennings was there. He heard them go off and felt himself stepping over dead people. The U.S. Geological Survey conducted studies of dust gathered from 35 locations in Lower Manhattan and found elements that would not have been there had this not been a nuclear event. Ironically, that means the government's own evidence contradicts the government's official position. 9/11 was brought to us compliments of the CIA, the neocons in the Department of Defense, and the Mossad. Don't let yourself be played. Read America Nuked on 9/11. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Recently is that BitChute does not police their network at all. You can talk all the smack you want. I mean, I kind of figured that. You could be a smack talker. You can lie. You can obfuscate. You can do, drama queen type stuff. That's fine. That's certainly freedom of speech and First Amendment. I get all that. But now we've kind of reached a point where apparently I can just make up a narrative or story that you guys are pedophiles and run some kind of a cartoonish parody on that theme. Or that you guys have a granddaughter and you're responsible for giving your granddaughter herpes. Now, that's all been registered with all these egregious acts have been registered with BitChute, and they have declined to remove the videos. So we got a real problem in my
mind. And as I've been explained, Russ, I think these are all automated, that no person has actually seen any of these complaints. Right. And you got a list of just a second. Russ, let me just say this. So you got a list of about 20 or 30 complaints. I got a list of a dozen or more. Others have. This is all going to be very substantial evidence that they're not fulfilling their contract. They say, you use us, you adhere to our guidelines, we will protect you, and it's not happening. And I think they are highly, I think they are, yes, but not, well, it's worse than that. It's not just false advertising. They're violating a contractual obligation they have to the users of their services. This is very substantial, in my opinion. Bill, would you agree?
Yeah, I have actually, guys. I emailed you all. What is online defamation? It's a great article. Buckingham is the title. This is. I mean, I can go through it real quick, but this is very apropos. And you know, I'm not an expert in all areas of the law. I'm learning here.
Yeah,
so
of course.
You guys, Jim. Let me make one more quick point, and I'll end regarding Wynn. At one point, Wynn issued me a cease and desist by email and by text, right? And then he said he was going to contact the FBI. My response was, that'd be great. Maybe then we can get the FBI to expose Sandy Hook. You know what I mean? Yeah, do that. So, by the way, I've been to the FBI office on 1000 Lafayette Boulevard in Bridgeport when I used to go to drive and walk. And they would open the door for me. I've also been to the DOJ, 157 Church Street in the Haven, third floor. I think it was the third floor, it was so long ago.
Bill.
And guess what? They wouldn't meet with me on a lot of different matters. I mean, I was reporting to the task force on corruption here.
Bill.
A lot of things I was doing.
Bill, you're getting a bit off the track. Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, what I'm saying is the idea that the FBI is going to expose Sandy Hook when the DOJ is the ones in the FBI who should be sued as primary.
Bill, we know it. We know it. Tell us about the BitChute liability. That's what matters.
All right, Jim. All right, got a lot of emotion going on here. Okay, so you can be the victim of online defamation, obviously, and this piece covered this very well. Common scenarios in which online defamation occurs and how to handle it. Okay, so you've got, generally speaking, I'm flipping internet defamation. Cyber libel is online publication of one or more false statements of fact about a third party, which causes reputational damage to the subject of the publication. You guys all there, you got this, right? Traditional forms of defamation, such as publication of libelous statements in like newspapers, utterances of false statements, do broadcasts, which of course all that's there. You need that to prove online defamation in court. Of course, you'll have all that. The defendant publishes a statement about the plaintiff to a third party. Well, it's been in the public domain. We got all that. The statement was false and capable of being proven false, not an opinion or hyperbole.
Hyperbole.
I'm sorry, hyperbole. I haven't seen that. That's right.
Means gross exaggeration.
Jim, if you would give me the screen just a moment, I'll show you an example of.
Yeah, but I want to get a little more from Bill first. But yeah, sure, I'm glad to do that.
Okay, so the statement was not privileged and made with requisite degree of fault, negligence, or actual malice. Okay, so this is actual gross negligence, if you ask me, and malice, what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know, Jim, you can talk about too, Jim, how you appealed to Todd to give you equal airtime on his Rumble channel, on his show, and vice versa. And maybe you guys could all work together, actually expose Sandy Hook for what it is. Wouldn't that be great if we
anyway,
made?
Let me give you a real live example of cyberbullying and defamation.
Let me just ask one more question. Does he cite statutes, Bill, in the article that are, in place that we could reference in bringing a suit?
Well, what I did was, let me go real quick. I pulled up the statutes and what statutes you need, and I have sent them to you guys in the past. So we have reckless negligence, torts of. Hold on a second. I'm going through here. So you got the diversity jurisdiction. Okay, that's your jurisdiction, federal court and First Amendment. You got subject matter jurisdiction. Okay. As far as the statutes, you got the codes. Hang on a second, guys. I think I just found it right there because a series of emails I sent out. I'll tell you what, can you defer to? Can we let Russ
Sure. Russ, you're host. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'll grab this. Share. Okay, can you guys see the image there on the right?
Now we can.
Yeah. Russ Winter. Now you're on a jury or you're a judge, and I'm bringing this case against you as either criminal complaint or civil case, and including BitChute. BitChute for failing to deal with this situation. And honestly, I asked BitChute to remove this shit. Not the one next to it, Cynthia McKinney, nothing else, none of the other claptrap that Victor puts out, specifically this video. Can you see the whole video? There's me, that's herpes. Yeah. He's got like herpes.
Yep.
Russ Winter claims granddaughter has herpes, tells trusting Jim Fetzer audience everyone has herpes. I don't know. I think most juries would blow these guys out of the water. I'm willing to take a chance on it.
Just scroll down and notice how he's claiming I'm attempting to censor free speech when he's committing defamation. Right, this isn't permissible speech. It's defamatory, libelous, it's slander. I mean, for crying out loud. So he's going to twist and distort everything. There seems to be no honest.
They could argue with the jackass that actually put up the pedo videos. He challenged me. I said, "Well, what are the damages? I don't have a very big channel." He says, "Yeah, but you go over and you do ridiculous interviews with Victor Hugo. Therefore, I think we can bring an action against you too." So we're having a kind of a conversation about this thing. I'm trying to give these guys a little bit of a wake-up call, but their reaction is to defame even more, to double down on the defamation. And Victor and the jackass are getting together for another interview that I'm going to be going over and picking out even more of this stuff. We've got some things in the work. I hope it comes out in our favor and we're able to get these.
Let's go back to Bill.
Victor, explain it to a judge.
Was there something else you wanted to add here before I regain host? Okay.
That's one of them I wanted to get in there, so the audience can understand what's going on. Because we're pretty mute on this stuff. We haven't really been talking about it.
I think the audience understands what's going on. I don't think there's anything subtle about it. Joaquin, I'd like further thoughts from you.
Well, as I said, I understand, he has done a little bit of, accusations on me of being, I don't know, a traitor, I think he said. I'm anything but anyway, my investment and stake in all this is much less than you, Ross, and you, Jim. I've been very busy trying to just write articles, and in the last 10 days, I, did 4 of them.
Fantastic.
Because, every other day I'm writing
critical times, and I've got to waste my time on this.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, because the world's falling apart. I understand you, both of you guys. I understand it's defamation of character, no doubt. And he needs to stop.
So does BitChute. BitChute can't be let off the hook. BitChute cannot be let off the hook on this stuff. They've got to carry out their obligation. I don't know what the problem is.
They need to be taught a lesson here. Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, well, I was reviewing this. This is Buckingham Law. This is an excellent article, guys. You really recommend to anybody.
We are all going to read it. Mark my words.
Well, I saw it. I'll read it, definitely.
Well, when I'm referencing it because they have cases that they've litigated where they prevailed. The point is, it is a real thing. It's not something that should be just dismissed. Maybe in this matter, since who has the pockets? Todd Callender's got a large law firm. He's liable. Hopefully he wants to come on board and act. Let's make lemonade out of these lemons. Hopefully Todd would be interested on the bigger picture. And then
I like Todd Callender. He's pretty well known. He's been out there. He even challenged the Pentagon in the lawsuit with the whole COVID bullshit.
Yes, he did.
I think he's a good guy. actually. So I hope he's not, going to be on the other side.
I think he's just gotten hijacked and hoodwinked, is what I think.
Well, in his own show, you can find it in Rumble, where he interviews Wynn. He really acknowledges he's in deference to Wynn about the matter. It's like one of the stories he covers in that particular episode. So I think that's why I put. By the way, I called Todd. I didn't have his email, but I constantly called his law firm. I heard back from paralegal, so I did have communication with the paralegal about my own personal issues. I was hoping he can help legally, but also about this Sandy Hook matter. And they wanted me to pay them $325 or $350 for an hour intake. I'm like, I'm not going to pay you guys. Either you want to talk. I've never paid for an intake with an attorney, not the initial. So I was like, no. So that was weird. But either way, I have seen his work, Russ, and I do agree. He does a lot of good work against fighting the government tyranny. So anyway, but it's important because the other thing that's important here, if we can't get a lawyer involved, people can fight pro se, and this could be a great thing we can cover going forward and how we did that and encourage your audience. It's not a possibility. You can do it.
I think
doing the research online, and that's how I started.
This is becoming a widespread phenomenon because it's so easy to put up anything you want on the internet and think that you're scot-free, that you'll never pay a price. You can say any damn thing you want. Victor appears to be highly naive in thinking because we're public figures that he can get away with anything and can't be subject.
Public figures, Bill. Are we even public figures?
Because you're being outspoken and taking stands on public issues. That's doing the shows makes you a public figure. We're all public figures.
Okay.
But go ahead.
But the point is that it simply raises the bar. You got to have malice. You got to have reckless disregard for facts. But the fact is, those are satisfied here. I mean, he's a prime candidate for a defamation suit. Now, the question of where he resides and how to nail it down and have him served, that's another question. But I guarantee on its face, he is guilty of defamation. And if you look at they point out some cases, some kinds of declarations are defamatory on their face. Like you and the herpes and your granddaughter, Russ.
I did not give him permission to use my.
Well, of course you didn't.
I did not give him permission to read any medical
Russ,
information.
Of course you didn't. The point I'm making, Russ, is what he did with you is defamatory on its face. It's defamatory on its face. You're not going to have to make a big argument. What he's done there is so vicious, nasty, contemptible. And I think he's done other things. Then this Wynn, saying I threw my case when he's not even looking at any of my briefs, that he's not read the book, not seen any of my videos. I mean, that's absurd. What did he think he was doing? Bill, further thoughts of yours?
Yeah, I agree on everything y'all saying. And don't forget, they might think, I don't have deep pockets, so they can't come after me. Well, we can get a declarative judgment that you guys can then use in the public domain in your favor.
Right.
And then we can get introductions.
Well, he tries to monetize these things. He tries to go for donations, and this is going to vitiate all of that, in my opinion. I mean, it's going to cut him off.
Well, that's another area you can be sued, because
of course.
Monetizing, making money on this stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Defamation.
I think he's judgment.
Yeah.
But the key is to clean up BitChutes Act. BitChute cannot.
Russ.
BitChute's trying to tighten it up a little bit.
Russ, we got it.
Yeah,
Bill, have you got more? I'm eager to read the article. Have you got more you want to add from me?
When we're talking federal jurisdiction, 28 U.S. Code Part 4 is jurisdictional and venue, and that's Cornell law. You can check that out. If you want, Jim, I could put some links in the chat, after the show.
Not in the chat. Send it by email. The chat disappears when the show's over. There's no more chat. You send it by email, Bill.
Yeah, well, I already sent it by email.
Yeah, well, right. So we're set. You did good. Good.
So go ahead. Do you want me to just close? I can close with the other thing is when you have intentional infliction of emotional duress,
which they're doing. This is all intentional. It's intended to inflict emotional distress. That's exactly what he's doing, which makes it so vicious, so malicious, right? Go ahead.
It's no secret to any of your audience. Jim and I have had our differences, but you know what? We work through it. Russ and I, we work through it, Hakeem and I. And that's what men do, right? You have your differences. You maybe get into a little bit of verbal tuss, gets a little locker room verbiage going there. We're all men drinking at bars, whatever. And then, it dies down, and here we are. So, unfortunately, what I think happened here is it's clearly obvious. Wynn has persuaded Victor to his narrative. Victor doesn't know any better. I'm not trying to give him an excuse. I'm just saying, like Russ said, he doesn't know the law. He's in deference to Wynn. Plus, imagine being Victor. You got Todd Cowan. You got 2 30-year attorneys. Todd, that's where Todd's on the hooks. Come on, Todd, come around here. We're asking you to let Jim have his voice. Do some journalistic prudence and give Jim a chance to share his story. Right? That would be appropriate. And maybe if he doesn't have the lawyers to help Jim out, well, then maybe he has referrals. Like, let's turn this into a positive. And if they don't go with that, well, then they had no intention. You see what I mean? You were testing their intent right now. That's also, go ahead. Anyone?
Yep, that's right. Well, and the thing that I want to get across is when adults have conflicts, the way to go about it as an adult, a mature adult, is off the screen, away from cameras, you have a dialogue to try and resolve. That's what mature adults do. Victor has everything on the public camera going when he does all this, defamation. And that's not way to resolve any kind of conflict. When
he's
you're
also fabricating.
He's also all 3 people that are in his audience are always on his side. It's crazy.
He's editing the comments. I saw one. There were 16 comments had been posted, but there were only 4 visible. He deleted the other 12 because they were critical of what he was doing. So he's doing that. He's manufacturing the impression that people like what he's doing. Yeah. Any recent decent, sane person is going to despise it, find it despicable.
Well, I think he's lost his audience. I think most of his audience is gone, but that hasn't stopped him. In a lot of ways, he doubles down on his behavior. When he sees that it's like a crash and burn. Let's do this. The Hannibal.
Ross, it's the narcissism. He has this narcissistic personality disorder that he wants everything, all the attention to him, and he doesn't care how he gets there. He'll trample on anyone. He'll slit their throat. He'll rape their babies, figuratively speaking. I mean, the guy's absolutely off his nut, in my opinion. That's not I'm not a psychiatrist, but there's something profoundly wrong with this guy.
As a licensed therapist in California for many years, you're right. Narcissistic personality disorder.
It's unbelievable. And Bill, you're doing so much good. And the fact that you reached out to Wynn early on and was telling him he was off the mark, that you knew because you'd even participated in drafting some of my motions. How could he have a more reliable source than you? God.
We also, let's not forget, I was on your show with Victor for several episodes. So I felt that hopefully I had my issues. So we were a lot of things coming up. But the point is that I think what happened here, part of it is, and I think it's obvious, we have this whole thing that Hakeem talked about and Russ, this narrowing, if you're not saying the Jews are the problem, 95% is the Jews, then somehow you're not authentic, right? Where the fact is you have Eustace Mullins, the Kabbalah, all this whole series, you have Milton William Cooper, the Illuminati. None of those older, mentors of ours would say it's just the Jews and the Jews. Now you can argue on Revelations 2939, the fake Jews, they're not, or whatever. We get into that. But the point is they're all working together. It doesn't matter who, okay, we're going to argue. Is it the Italians, the Persians, the Jews, the Vatican? Who gives a shit? The bottom line is they're all part of the control mechanism that's effing us all over. Do you see what I'm saying? How it disseminates, we can talk about the Pilgrim Society, whatever. You see what I'm saying? The Black Pope. The point is, it's happening.
And this is,
if we come together,
and this is,
they split it up. That's what they want.
And
they
this,
want this. Go ahead.
This goes back to the incident that precipitated all of this, where on Truth versus News, I had Brian and I had Victor as commentators, and Victor was pulling his "it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews" shtick, and Brian was taking exception as not subtle, as an oversimplification, as a caricature. And when he excused himself on that ground, Victor started attacking him as a coward, which shocked the shit out of me. I didn't expect that at all. And I told Victor if he would stop attacking Brian, we could reconcile and I'd bring him back to this show. But he said, no, his journalistic integrity required for him to expose the truth. Except he was committing defamation against Brian as well as he has now against the rest of us. It's just outrageous. Damn.
Well, this is what's festering with it. It's not separate. If you listen to his shows, it's not separate. So he's then insinuating that because, i.e., this isn't my verbiage, like Brian is, and you and whoever is Jews. You're not authentic because you're not on board with their narrative. Let's just put it that way without getting any deeper, which is ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
So then they're
the thing is, I probably am some ways I'm pretty close to Victor's view on this Jew thing.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm pretty staunch anti-Semite. But I also realize as a big boy and as a mature person that I'm going to get some pushback from people on it. But I'm not going to burn everybody to the ground. And if somebody gives me a little pushback on my worldview, Sacred Russ Winter's worldview, I don't blow up, I kind of go, oh, okay, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I can come back and talk to this person later. I can, I can kind of go about doing my thing. But he's got to burn the whole world down. That's what's bad.
Yeah, let me apologize to the audience that we couldn't take callers today. Things got mucked up because Stu Peters was interviewing me on JFK and it got carried over into the showtime. So I wasn't there at the right when it began. Let's kind of conclude with a final thought. Joaquin, you up first.
Well, there's so much going on. I mean, it looks like asshole Trump is going to war against Iran. It doesn't look like, he sends this Steve Witkoff, who's an idiot, to go talk to the foreign minister of Iran. There's so much going on in the world. So that's why, yes, it's important to finally step in and say, enough, Victor, grow up, be mature. Or there are legal complications that are going to be a consequence. So I'm all for, doing this. It's important to get it out there. I've been wanting to get past it for a long time, but, the guy's just a megalomaniac that keeps doing it. It doesn't stop, So,
yes.
Yeah, I understand. We got to put our foot down.
Rush, your thoughts?
If you're a big jerk and a jackass and a defamer and a slanderer online and you direct that against me and it's actionable, I'm going to defend myself and I'm going to come for you. Simple as that. Don't do it. Now, so far, it really hasn't happened. I don't have anybody harassing me. I don't really have anybody. I got doxxed. I've been doxxed by Victor. There's a lot of people I think have my email. They doxed you too, Jim. Are you getting any?
No, I'm surprised he's even put out my phone number, and I haven't had a single call. Bill, thank you for all that.